We are figuring this out as we go.
Okay, so hi everyone. We're so excited that you're here. We are the Four Pillars, and you can see us all up on here. Myself, I'm Dr. Heather Quayle. We've got Dr. Christine Hart-Kress, Dr. Laura Valley, and Jessica Baluli, who is so gracious of her time tonight to do the educational session for us. And basically, what we did is the four of us have collaborated to start this program for our patients. We share a lot of resources together and a lot of time together, and we thought, what a great way to collaborate and put all our colleagues together and have each other speak and share resources. So that's kind of how this came about. I don't want to take very much of Jessica's time, so I am going to introduce my amazing friend and then I'm going to let her have at it and just go forward. So, real fast, for those that don't know, Dr. Kress is from Christina Kress is from Virginia area. Dr. Laura Valley is in Ohio. Did I botch that up, Laura? I think you're Ohio. Jessica's in South Carolina, and I am in Virginia.
No,
Jessica's a
you're
double.
not.
I'm not in Virginia. I'm in Georgia. Sorry. Jessica's a double board certified nurse practitioner in women's health, family medicine, and a menopause certified practitioner. She founded and leads Nurture for Women. And it's a boutique practice in Columbia, South Carolina, and she's dedicated to providing comprehensive midlife care, menopause, and preventative care. Background spans critical care, chronic disease management, and women's health, and she brings a whole person, evidence based approach to metabolic wellness, hormonal transitions, and weight physiology. So, without further ado, Jessica, have at it. She's going to spend an hour with us talking all about weight wellness, reset, rebalance, and reclaiming your health. And I learn so much from her all the time. So I'm excited.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I hope that I can figure out how to get this so that I can read everything. Okay, so yes, like she said, we're talking about metabolic wellness today, and the majority of you are probably perimenopausal or menopausal, and so these questions come up a lot. Why am I gaining weight? I haven't changed anything. I mean, this is like, we hear this every day. Is there anything I can do to prevent it? And should I start hormone therapy to get rid of this fat? That is a loaded question. And we're not going to focus a ton of time on the hormone therapy part of this. Very, very short. So we'll cover it just in a couple of slides. Why is this not going though? Okay. Primarily, the changes in body composition during menopause happen because of a few different subsets or categories, hormonal factors. And you guys are probably fed a lot of this in Instagram every day, so some of it might be review. But hormonal factors, primarily the decrease in estradiol, is the biggest driver of this. It leads to an increase in visceral fat. With that, we have an increase in ghrelin, that is the hormone hunger that is secreted from fat and really drives a lot of those cravings that we get. We also have a decrease in testosterone and a decrease in progesterone. So all of our hormones are part of this. We also have age-related factors. Surprisingly, for most, a decrease in the resting metabolic rate and energy expenditure doesn't really happen until after 60. So it's not really a decreased metabolism per se. There is a decrease in subcutaneous fat tissue, which makes things just kind of like look a little different. And so that's primarily like we notice that visually. Then there's also like issues with early onset of menopause. If you go through menopause earlier, that can be an issue. And then a big decrease in lean muscle mass. And we're really going to cover that today. Also for lifestyle factors, physical activity, a decrease in that. We're busy, we may be mothers, or we may be working full time in jobs that demand a lot. We might be of that evening chronotype, meaning we stay up later, and we'll cover a little bit about that later. Smoking and alcohol can be part of that, and sleep is the biggest one. The menopausal transition is a critical metabolic window. So we know that body composition changes during menopause. We see, like I said, the increased visceral fat and central adiposity, decreased lean and bone mass. Your weight might be stable, but the composition changes because of these things. And then distinct from the chronicle, like it's not just necessarily your age alone. You can have a body that appears young and is older when we look at all those factors. Also, visceral fat just increases. So like we said, from about 5 to 8% to 15 to 20% of the total body fat. This actually comes from some research that was done that we learned at the Menopause Society conference this year. So the biggest cause of midlife weight gain happens to be muscle loss. It's not actually aging. It's the muscle loss slows your system down. So midlife weight gain, sorry about that spelling error. Midlife weight gain isn't caused by a slower metabolism. It's primarily caused by losing muscle. Like I said, that slowdown in metabolism doesn't actually occur till about age 60. Muscle is a really big part of your glucose disposal system. We say this all the time in practice because your muscle is really responsive to blood sugar. So if the muscle that you have is decreasing, there's less of a process or the ability to process blood sugar. So that leads to insulin resistance, inflammation, and it also affects your metabolic stability. As muscle declines, blood sugar control worsens and energy regulation becomes less efficient. So we really need to maintain muscle in order to keep our blood sugar stable and to also keep our insulin sensitivity where we want it. Like I said before, that even though your weight may continue to be stable, the composition can worsen. So even if we're noticing that our weight isn't changing much, it's important to continue trying to build muscle. So the science behind it is that muscle is metabolically very, very active. When we lose it, we have fewer calories burned. We have worse glucose control, less physical resilience. We don't, not only do we not age as well, but we also are not as resilient to stressors. It's kind of like a glucose sponge. So it pulls the sugar out of the bloodstream, it improves insulin sensitivity, and it stabilizes energy and hormones. And when we're talking about hormones, we're not necessarily talking about the hormones of like the sex hormones that we talk about in perimenopausal care as much. We're talking about cortisol, ghrelin, leptin. There's a whole cascade of those hormones, PYY, there's a zillion of them, but ghrelin and leptin are the primary drivers. So what makes up metabolism? People ask this all the time, and there's 4 things that calculate what your metabolism is like. The thermic effect of food, just you processing food through your GI tract, accounts for a decent part of the calories that you burn. Then there's exercise. If you're exercising and actually like even going up and down the stairs at work can be part of that exercise activity thermogenesis. That's a decent part. Then there's the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is like the non-sleep, non-eating work that you do every day. So people always say to me, like, can I include, like I walk a lot, I'm a nurse and I walk all up, up and down a unit. Well, actually, that's not really exercise. If you're doing things out of your way, then that can be part of the exercise activity thermogenesis. But otherwise, it's really just part of that non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's just your everyday activity. And then we have your resting metabolic rate, which is the primary user of your calories. And that's just you living. I mean, you could be on a couch and you would still burn those calories for the most part. There's some caveats to that, but your metabolic health. So we alluded a little bit to blood sugar balance and why it matters. It really is very normal for your blood sugar to rise after a meal and to return to baseline a few hours later. But when glucose spikes too high or drops too low, it creates a lot of chaos in your body. Those ups and downs are primarily driven by frequent snacking, meals high in refined starches and sugars, and naked carbs. Naked carbs would be like just eating potato chips or crackers, things that don't have a protein or a fat on them to help kind of slow down that sugar spike. Over time, this leads to insulin resistance, fatigue and brain fog, cravings and mood swings, visceral fat gain, and then you're at a higher risk of for endothelial issues in your cardiovascular system, type 2 diabetes, and things like that. So it's important to work with what your body's rhythm is already. And, you know, when I started putting together these slides, I wanted to make sure that I gave you some tips and things so that you could actually have, like usable information. So your body is more insulin sensitive in the morning and early afternoon. It actually, you are the most insulin resistant in the evenings. That is why we really recommend that you, and we're going to talk about breakfast a little later, but that's why we recommend that you have larger meals earlier in the day if weight wellness is something that you are really working on. So make your largest meal at midday, prioritize that protein, fiber, and vegetable at dinner, and avoid heavy meals and snacks closer to bedtime because your body will have a harder time processing that sugar. Here are some smart strategies for blood sugar stability, and you guys are going to get a copy of these slides. In fact, the slide deck that I have for you has even more information in it. But things that you can do are start meals with leafy greens or veggies to slow down that breakdown of the sugar. Also prioritizing protein. You guys hear it all the time and you're probably fed it every day in your Instagram, but making sure that you're getting at least 20 grams, preferably 30 grams of protein in each meal. Also fiber. Fiber is kind of like a sieve. So when you eat fiber at the beginning of a meal, it kind of like catches the sugar that you will the starch that breaks down into sugar and helps slow that down so that you don't have so much of a spike. Those spikes are what really make it hard to manage blood sugar over time. It's those up and downs that over time kind of sabotage your insulin sensitivity. Healthy fats can also play a role in helping to minimize or slow that blood sugar. You can try eating every 3 to 4 hours. It's important not to necessarily skip meals, but it also is important to have, like when I say every 3 to 4 hours, I'm talking like having a fast in between each meals. Constant snacking can really keep your blood sugar elevated as well. So, you know, if you eat, and we'll get to this a little bit later, I'll give you kind of a pattern that I like for my patients to follow. But if you eat every 3 to 4 hours or you have 3 to 4 hours in between a meal, your gut, your GI tract has time to kind of do the cleanup work in between the meals. Let's see, we talked about naked carbs. Making sure that you're getting 30 grams of fiber daily is a really great way to work on both cardiovascular health and to work on your blood sugar. It's really easy for us to drink our calories, so minimizing sugary drinks. A lot of us will go to Starbucks, we'll get a venti, and then that'll last us for several hours. So we're thinking, oh, that 500 calories lasted me all day. But that is going to keep a constant blood sugar elevation if that is happening. Walking 20 minutes after you have a carb-heavy meal is also a great idea. I also want to touch on sleep. So this was from data that we received at the Menopause Society. This is a study, I think that was from 2017 maybe, and it talked about how poor quality sleep is associated with higher energy intake and poor diet quality. And I think that that's really an interesting concept. We definitely notice that most of us feel snackier after a poor night's sleep. So, you know, a lot of women come to see us because one of their first symptoms of perimenopause is poor sleep. And then their second concern is weight gain. So sleep is really one of the master drivers of metabolic health. This study that was also mentioned, this is another one, this might have been the one from 2017, that when we have chronic sleep deficiency, that's about 6.5 hours of sleep or less, we tend to eat 385 calories more. So if we are having chronic sleep restriction, we're going to be in excess of the calories that we actually need. And so that is really one of the biggest drivers of that weight gain that's associated with chronic sleep deprivation, is that excess calorie intake. So like I said, sleep is really important as a pillar of metabolic health. There's nothing that sleep doesn't affect. Every part of our system. When you think about your GI tract, many of us, if we are not sleeping well and we tend towards IBS, we'll notice that we'll have more diarrhea or constipation. It definitely increases the inflammation in our endothelial cells, in the lining of the lining of our vascular system. It also increases ghrelin, the hunger hormone, and suppresses leptin, the satiety hormone. So we'll notice more cravings and more giving into the cravings as well. Promotes insulin resistance, and it leads to fat storage. I'm sure you've heard about this a lot, that insulin is a driver of fat storage. And it's true, insulin's really important, but in large amounts and excess amounts, it has to do something with that sugar that it is being resistant to it. And what it's going to do is sweep it all up, package it up nicely, and deposit it somewhere, probably in your midsection. So insulin resistance as a mechanism, or sleep deprivation as a mechanism for insulin resistance is huge. We also notice it in shift workers a lot. So that's something to think about if that's work that you do. One thing to note is that studies show that nighttime snackers have more difficulty losing weight and more disrupted sleep patterns. My tip for that is brush your teeth. Brush your teeth after you eat your evening meal. That makes things feel a little more final. How to reset your internal clock if sleep is difficult for you. Got a whole lot of tips here. One of the best things you can do is get early morning sunlight with 30 to 60 minutes of walking. Who has time for 30 to 60 minutes every morning before you go to work? It's not huge. I wouldn't say that most of us have time for that. So something you could consider, and I know it's cold out right now, but Eves is something like going out and drinking your coffee on your deck or on your porch, getting that morning sunlight to just kind of let your system know it's time to be awake. Avoiding caffeine after 12 p.m. or within 8 hours of bedtime. If you're going to have alcohol, make sure that it's 3 to 4 hours before bed. Another thing to think about is a 12-on-12 fasting window. I am not a huge fan of intermittent fasting, like an 8-hour window, but I love a 12-hour eating window. It helps your digestive system rest and reset the next morning before you take in more calories. If you have to prepare for time zone changes, do it gradually before travel, and avoid naps if you have a difficulty sleeping. Let's talk a little bit about stress. Cortisol is the stress hormone that shapes your physiology. It's important. Cortisol is just as important as insulin, but when there's too much of it, it can cause a problem. When we have elevated cortisol, there's increased appetite and cravings. There's definitely a preferential fat storage in the abdominal area as opposed to moving it through and excreting what you don't use. There's also decreased muscle mass with increased cortisol. So a lot of us have stress that we cannot necessarily, like, we don't have a say sometimes in the stress that that we are dealing with in our lives. But there are ways to manage that. And, you know, simple things like, well, if we need a mental health a counselor or something like that. If we need something as simple as breathing exercises, the Calm app is fantastic. Working on sleep, if you have an issue, I was talking to Dr. Heather Quell today, and we were saying that last year we had never talked so much about sleep as last year. So I think women are really noticing that, but working on sleep and the drivers of sleep difficulty is really important for stress management. Okay, so healthy body composition isn't always what you see. You know, we are so focused on what we see in the mirror, but a normal BMI doesn't necessarily mean that there is a healthy metabolism or that there isn't visceral fat. So there are markers of healthy body beyond what you see in the mirror. True health includes blood pressure, blood sugar control, a healthy lipid profile, and body composition. So that body composition is that lean mass versus fat mass. It's not just what the scale says. So we can work on our metabolic health beyond what the scale says. We've talked a little bit about visceral fat, but visceral fat is what accumulates in the midsection deeper than what is, let's say, the subcutaneous fat. Subcutaneous fat is generally harmless. It's probably the most annoying because we see it in the mirror, but it is generally harmless. What we need to really focus on is the visceral fat that accumulates inside and around the organs. Things that you can do for that. And we have some really great webinars that will be coming up focusing a little bit more on this, but cardiovascular exercise. 30 minutes a day is what's recommended for a total of 150 minutes a week. Anything you do is positive. So don't ever let the inability to get 150 minutes deter you from doing anything. Strength training is great, 75 minutes a week to preserve muscle and improve insulin sensitivity, and then boost your resting metabolic rate is wonderful. High quality protein. I sit around 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. You know, we've seen in excess of 1.6 mentioned and pushed. That sometimes can be difficult. I mean, I would say it's always difficult for people to reach that level. And so I would recommend shooting for about a gram, 0.8 even. You can go as low as 0.6. What we're really talking about is if we're looking for recomposition of your body. So really to improve the muscle. I always tell patients the only way to build muscle is to eat it and to eat it and then break it down through exercise and build it back up. So it is important that you're eating it. And that's why we see such wide varieties of, you know, how much you should eat. But I settle around 0.8 grams per pound. Things that make it difficult to improve your metabolism is added sugar. And so try to stick with less than 6 teaspoons of added sugar daily. People ask me all the time, what about a sugar substitute? Those aren't great either, but if we have if we're weighing the two and your goal is to lose weight, then I do recommend for patients, if they've really struggled with sugar consumption, to use the sugar substitute. Also, obviously, 10% or less of your calories should come from ultra processed foods. And then try to stay less than 2 alcoholic beverages per week. Do we track? Yes. So the majority of us as clinicians try to track. If we are helping you with weight loss, we're either doing something like an InBody. I personally have a Staiku, or we're recommending that you have something that you can use at home, like a Hume or a scale or something like that. The reason is because what gets measured gets managed. So you got to have the right data to do that, though. So if we use it as a baseline and then we move from there. I always tell my patients, I don't care so much about the scale part of the body composition machine as I care about the trend in actual fat and lean mass. So I do recommend tracking those metrics. Another thing that I share with my patients is that when we're working towards weight loss, I like to focus more on behavior-based goals than what I call vanity goals. Vanity goals, I usually tell my patients, pick one thing that is related to your size or your pounds, and you're allowed that. That's okay. But really focus on the health promoting behaviors, the nutritional quality, maybe something that you want to do that your metabolism, your body composition has not allowed you to do in the past. Because there are other benefits besides what you see on the scale. Real fat loss takes time. It's got to be sustainable. So my recommendation is that when you're trying to lose weight, you really only aim for about a half of a pound to a pound per week. Anything more than that tells us that you're probably losing muscle. So I would really recommend that you adjust your expectations as you're wanting to lose weight, and you kind of enjoy the process more than the number on the scale. Rapid weight loss also can lead to hormonal dysregulation and weight regain. All right, celebrating wins. Like I said before, there are more pluses that aren't scale related. Things like more energy, better sleep, fewer cravings, less bloating, a decrease in brain fog. And I know so many of us experience that in perimenopause, but a lot of that is related to the hormones of hunger. So when that is improved, we see an improvement in brain fog, better endurance, and more strength. talking about energy balance. So I don't like the idea that it's calories in, calories out. That's really oversimplified and outdated, but calories are a unit of energy. And so the way we measure them tells us how much fuel our body needs and how much fuel a certain food provides. We have to look at positive energy balance, which is weight gain, weight maintenance, which is actually energy imbalance, and negative energy balance as weight loss as an important part of weight loss. It does go beyond the calories in, calories out old framework, but it is important that we think of that we consider a calorie deficit. So what we're thinking, if you're wanting to lose, very simplified, if you're wanting to lose a pound a week, you need about a 500 calorie deficit. Now, that's not going to be perfect every day. It's not something that I tell patients that they have to do, but you have to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose weight. So for most women, around 1,500 calories, depending on your stature, down to 1,300 calories will usually put you in that calorie deficit. Now, I believe that all four of us are able to calculate your energy expenditure. I'm not positive, but that is something that I help patients do because that changes as you lose weight. So if you are noticing that you're not losing weight, we may need to look at your energy expenditure and recalculate those numbers that we talked about before that go into your metabolism and figure out how many calories you actually need daily so that we can figure out what level would put you in an energy deficit or in a calorie deficit. Fat loss plateaus are really normal. If you're on a weight loss journey, it happens all the time, and that's just because of metabolic adaptation. Metabolic adaptation is the idea that your body wants to conserve energy when it's in a deficit. It's going to slow down those processes, that BMR, that basal metabolic rate, in order to conserve energy. And so usually what we have to do in order to get beyond that is either we have to look at the pillars. That's what I usually tell my patients. We have to kind of recalibrate the things that you're doing to get in that calorie deficit. We also need to make sure that you're getting plenty of water. We need to look at your exercise, your energy output, and we obviously need to look at nutrition. If your body has really downregulated the calories that it needs to survive every day, then one thing that we can look at doing is a reverse diet. Reverse dieting means that we systematically help you add back calories and exercise in order to give yourself a boost. And it's often how I recommend patients move away from some sort of medication if they're using a medically assisted weight loss. So sometimes muscle gains, as we're tracking, can mask fat loss on the scale. And that's why I said that the scale is much less important than the body fat and the lean mass percentages and pounds that we see on a body composition scale. The scale doesn't show the full picture. So if we're tracking and having intervals, regularly scheduled intervals, I usually like my patients to have a body composition every 10 pounds or so. Then we're able to see those changes over time so that we can make sure that the right weight is coming off. Now, when there is rapid weight loss, a pound of loss per week or more, it is something that we can expect that you might lose a decent amount of muscle. And so we do want to monitor that. 22 up to 22% of weight loss can be muscle and considered normal. But any more than that is considered excessive. We like to see that the muscle initially will increase, but then table off, and then we hope we'll start to see an increase. Smaller body does equal lower energy requirements. So that's important to remember and important to know that you may need to change your energy, what you're taking in. We're going to skip that. Tips for fat loss: create a strategy. Make sure that you're prepping. Huge. Try a 12 to 12 fasting approach, really important. Practice eating mindfully, use a calorie tracker, and make sure you're drinking water with meals. We talked a little bit about that calories in, calories out. It's too simplified, but it is important. We don't want absolutes. We know that there can be food labels can be off. But we do want to make sure that you are getting the amount of macronutrients that you need in order to sustain that weight loss. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. We're going to skip that one. These will be in your slides. All right. So talking about macronutrients is important. You've got carbohydrates, protein, and anti-inflammatory fats that really help our bodies run every day. Carbohydrates are not the villains that we have made them over the years, and neither is fat. But it's important that we know that there are quality types of each. I usually tell patients to focus on carbohydrates at about 30 to 35% of their total calories. Vegetables, I don't count so much in my book, and I'll tell you why here in just a minute, but carbs help with brain, muscle, and cellular energy. Protein is also really important for building muscle, for cellular repair, and for blood sugar balance. And then fats are really important for your hormones. So we got to make sure we have them. Carbohydrates are, like we said, are very important, but there is a good, better, best version of each of these. This is kind of the grid that I give for patients, and it'll continue on the next slide. When we're starting something, rather than counting calories, I say, instead, look at the carbohydrates that you're eating. Try to only have 1 to 2 servings of starch per day. If you're having 2 slices of bread, that may be 2 servings. So it's important to think about that when you have a sandwich or a sub or something like that. As far as non-starchy veggies go, you can have as many of those as you want. They are usually low in calories, high in micronutrients, and they also are going to slow down your blood sugar. Then for fruit, I usually tell patients 1 to 2 servings per day is a great idea. They're full of polynutrients and polyphenols and phytonutrients, and they're great for fiber typically. Like I said, there's a good, better, best version of them, but fruit is typically a wonderful addition every day. The best idea is to tack it on to the end of the meal and think of it as dessert. Sweets, you can have 1 serving per day, or you can, if you're not a sweets person, you can add to any category above that, like the fruit or the starch, if your plan is to lose weight. Is cutting carbs necessary? No, it's not. But what you can do is look at refined carbs versus refined carbs and processed grains, and try to eat them minimally. It's much better to have a nutrient-dense carb, like a whole grain, bean, lentil, vegetable, or fruit. Carbs are important. They provide what other foods don't, and they provide you energy for your workouts and daily activities. So don't completely limit them. Also, fiber is a carbohydrate, is part of carbohydrates. So it is really important that you're getting your fiber. Not only will it help you move things through your GI tract, it'll slow your blood sugar down, it'll feed your microbes in your gut. Often when you're cutting carbs too much, it means you're cutting fiber, and that's a problem. Protein is essential for preserving mass, like we've talked about before, and maintaining a metabolic rate during weight loss. It also helps you feel satiated and reduces cravings. So really important that you are trying to get the amount of protein in that's recommended for your weight. Fats are essential. They're not optional. Fat does not make you fat. Forget that it's the enemy. It really does help with brain and nervous system health and hormone production. So they are important, but there are good, better, best types. And we need to make sure that we're eating those different types of fats. Omega-9 monounsaturated fats that are found in olive oil, avocado, almonds, nuts, things like that are wonderful. And polyunsaturated fats found in salmon, sardines. I don't know who actually eats those. Maybe you do. But they are a wonderful source of polyunsaturated fats. A case for breakfast. All right, I said that we were going to mention this. I have a lot of patients who come in and they intermittent fast, and intermittent fasting is not a horrible idea. And actually, Dr. Fung wrote a book that was wonderful, Obesity Code, about intermittent fasting. And I use a lot of what he said in practice. But for a perimenopausal or menopausal woman, what it typically means if you are not feeling hungry at breakfast time is that your metabolic rate is decreased. So I love for my patients to eat a breakfast high in protein with a little bit of fiber, a little bit of carb, and some fat in it. It shows that we have better balanced cortisol, we have better mental clarity. If you are suffering from brain fog, eating breakfast can be a game changer. There's actually a decreased incidence of overweight if you eat breakfast because you're likely to have less calories later in the day, more stable blood sugar, and reduced risk of heart disease. This is kind of how I like for my patients to look at their day. I recommend getting a good hearty breakfast in, moving towards the savory breakfast. If you like a yogurt, berries, nut option, that's a wonderful option too. But savory breakfast with eggs, avocado on a whole grain piece of toast is a great idea. Lunch, I like you to try to avoid snacking between breakfast and lunch, and then eat a nice lunch full of protein, some fiber. A bowl is always a wonderful idea. I typically recommend that you cut up at the beginning of the week a bunch of different vegetables. You stick them in glass containers. You maybe make a dressing from scratch, or use some sort of olive or some sort of oil and vinegar. And you can kind of, just by changing up the protein or that dressing, you can have some good variety in and a quick lunch every day. I do recommend an afternoon snack just because typically we go a lot longer between lunch and dinner. And so your snack is actually snack time around 2:30 or 3 if you have an energy like that happens. It's a really nice idea to do something like a protein shake at that point in time. And then dinner should fill half your plates with veggies, some green, maybe some color, and a lean protein. Water, it's super important. You guys know why. It helps to break down fat, it curbs appetite, and it improves digestion. So make sure that you're drinking plenty of water. Usually recommend at least half of your pounds in ounces of water per day. Anti-inflammatory nutrition, you all know what that is. It's the Mediterranean approach. There's just no best diet. The best diet is whatever helps you stay on track. But the Mediterranean diet approach is just something that helps us kind of gives us a framework for eating clean, healthy foods and minimizing processed foods. Lots of nutrients, fewer calories per food item. It's really just about balance. I also recommend an 80-20 approach. I don't think that we all need to be restricting all the time. You can kind of do a scattered pattern. There are some people who give themselves a day to enjoy a little bit more on the weekend. That can work for some people, but really just trying to have an 80-20 and a Mediterranean approach can be really helpful in midlife. All right. So everybody wants to talk about medical weight loss, and medical weight loss is really wonderful. This is what I'm going to finish on. It's a really wonderful solution for many people, but it's not what everybody wants to do. There are other options besides the GLP-1 medications. Things like Contrave can be a good option to diet suppression or appetite suppression. It works for some, it doesn't work for others. If you're looking for a medical weight loss option. But hands down, the most amazing tools that we have right now are the GLP-1 and GIP medications. Many of us providers do offer them, and they're not for everyone. And not everyone is a good candidate. They're a class of hormone-based therapies. They've been studied for the last 20 years, and originally they were for diabetes. But for many years, as they were studying, they found a very significant amount of weight loss. And so they can be a wonderful tool for women in midlife. They mimic and enhance two naturally occurring gut hormones, GLP, which is glucagon-like peptide 1, and GIP, which is glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide That actually has two different names, but that's the one we usually go by. These hormones are secreted by the gut in response to food and play a crucial role in regulating appetite, digestion, insulin response, and energy balance. How do they support weight loss? They regulate appetite. GLP and GIP act as receptors in the brain. So they really help us to signal fullness and reduce hunger cues. They take away some of that stress that happens when around dieting. It helps reduce cravings, emotional eating, and portion sizes. I was talking to a patient today as we were trying to titrate her medication, and we were talking about how freeing it can feel to not be a part of the Clean Plate Club. Something happened when she reached a certain level that allowed her to push her plate forward and say, I'm done, when so often that there was an emotional response to doing that. They do slow gastric emptying. So, you can feel more quickly. But the stomach does empty food slower. So there can be GI side effects like constipation. Some patients do experience diarrhea. It's kind of interesting when that happens, but it is possible. But you can also have feelings of fullness and nausea with them. How do they support weight loss? They help balance blood sugar. They've got superpowers. That's one of the biggest things they do is they reduce inflammation and they balance blood sugar. So they stimulate insulin when glucose levels rise, and they suppress glucagon, which prevents unnecessary glucose release from the liver. More stable blood sugar equals fewer energy crashes, fewer cravings, and better fat burning capacity. So like I always tell patients, it's not just the weight loss. They do have many metabolic benefits. It just kind of depends on what you're looking for. They also support energy expenditure. Emerging evidence suggests that GLP-1 receptor activation may increase thermogenesis and raise resting energy expenditure, making it easier to burn calories and preserve lean muscle. They also rebalance satiety hormones. As we gain weight, we do tend to secrete more of these hormones. So it does help to balance that out. The result is more balanced hormonal environment for healthy weight regulation. Bottom line is that they are great. They don't work for everyone. They don't do the work for you. They're not cheating. They're wonderful tools. So they can just help make the process easier. So for some people, this is an absolute no-go, and that's okay. That's not something that they want. And for other people, they can take the stress off of dieting and help you feel more inclined to do the work that allows you to improve your metabolic health. They reduce the physiological drive to overeat. They improve blood sugar stabilization, and they support better food choices and portion control. That's it. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If I don't have an answer, I'm happy to get back to you. If you have, I don't know, haven't been manning any questions, so I don't know. I didn't even address that. I'm happy to answer anything that you have for me. Heather, how do I do that?
Okay, hold on. Sorry. Okay, so if you all have any questions for Jessica, you can unmute your line and you can come on. You don't have to show your face, but you can unmute and ask away.
Do you have any questions? Is there anything that I didn't cover that you wanted to know?
Everyone's so quiet.
I do have a question.
Okay.
What about supplements? Any suggestions on supplements to help with weight loss?
Mm-hmm. So there is no supplement. There are a lot of supplements that you can buy online, and supplements, I'm sure are highly unregulated. And so you never know exactly what you're getting from like the proprietary blends that are supposed to help you lose weight. So I don't typically recommend anything like that. The important thing is to support your bodily functions. So I think that I didn't mention it, but I think I had a slide that discussed vitamin D and the B vitamins and their importance in weight regulation. Vitamin D is actually a prohormone. So we think of it as a vitamin, but it plays a role in thyroid health. It plays a role in mood. It plays a role in so many different processes. So making sure that you're optimizing your vitamin D can help with weight regulation. The B vitamins also, as we're thinking about decreasing inflammation, increasing energy, and decreasing fatigue. The B vitamins can play a big role in that. There are a couple others that you can think of. So when or that you can consider. One of them is myo-inositol. Myo-inositol works kind of as a natural metformin, if you will. It's a great option for helping with blood sugar balance. If you are having, some of those peaks and valleys in your blood sugar. So great option. Another one is dihydroberberine. Dihydroberberine is taken with meals, and we really only see about a 5-pound weight loss, but it is a nice supplement that helps with blood sugar regulation because that's such a driver of weight gain. Do you guys have anything else to add? Other ones that you typically, those are my go-tos usually. Anyone else have any?
There's when I went to the longevity conference in December, there was a lot of research presented about CaloCurb, CALOCURB. It has Armistate is the name of it. And it is a supplement that does activate the GLP-1 receptors. The actual researchers were presenting it. It's really very effective at activating GLP receptors, but also decreasing appetite. It is a good segue for patients who are coming off of GLPs who have concern about weight gain coming off the GLPs. You can buy it on Fullscript. You can also buy it direct from the company. And you do need to, you have to work up to the full dose, which is 4 tablets a day. That was the first time I had known about it. And if I hadn't heard the research and that was done on it, I probably would have been a little bit suspect of it, but the research is really, really good. Randomized control trials on it. So,
okay, good. Anybody else have ideas?
The fiber, when you were talking about that, if you're getting like 2 starchy carbs, 2 vegetables, 2 fruits, that generally gets you up to about that 30 grams, or is it probably going to take a little bit more effort than that?
So I have actually a really great, let me grab this, sorry. I have a great little, I share with patients, discussion about how to get, because fiber, I think, we've talked about protein for so long and like protein, and we kind of neglected fiber, and fiber really is more important, I think, honestly. I'm not more important, but you have to think about it more. Like, it's not something that you just all of a sudden you're getting that 30 grams. You have to really dig deep to find it. But I have this, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I have this page that's a full day of fiber. And you can get in a couple of meals, if you really wanted to go fiber heavy, you could get that fiber in. So like an example of an 18-gram fiber meal, a half cup cooked oats with 1 egg cooked in. I'd probably add even a little bit of protein powder so you can up your protein. A tablespoon of chia seeds and 1 cup of raspberries. It's 18 grams of fiber.
Oh, wow.
You can do it. But it does take some learning about what your favorite foods are that have fiber in them. And we could do a whole discussion on like the different types of fiber, soluble versus insoluble, and dietary fiber. And can you replace your fiber with Metamucil? Like it is, there's a lot of thought on that, about, what is best. And obviously the best idea is to get it from Whole Foods. But even just adding in a fiber supplement is a good idea when you're having a hard time reaching that. A midday meal, an idea was 2 cups raw greens plus 1 cup chopped veggies. And when I say 2 cup raw greens, I'm talking about like raw greens. We're not talking romaine or iceberg or anything like that. A half cup of beans, a half medium avocado, and 4 ounces shredded chicken with a lemon vinaigrette. That's going to get you 19 grams of fiber.
Wow.
So 2 cups raw greens. So it's just finding out, like measuring out something that you could be your go-to, and knowing about how much that equals. So, but yeah, if you're getting the 1 to 2 starches, you're probably, I mean, it completely depends on what item you're choosing and within those groups. Like an artichoke has 7 grams of protein or of fiber, whereas an apple has maybe 6. So, you know, it completely depends on how you compose those snacks and those
Okay.
meals. But I do have a nice fiber handout that when we I can send to the other clinicians, and we can post that as well. Because it is a nice, like, just so that you can conceptualize how much fiber is in each of the things you're eating and what categories they fit into.
Sure.
Two other things that I have found for fiber that are quick and easy. I think probably all of my patients, they hear me talk about it all the time, is Fiber One cereal. 2/3 of cup is a serving, 160 calories, has 17 grams of fiber in it. You can add it to yogurt with protein, a scoop of protein powder and berries. And then add that Fiber One. Though, if you're like me and haven't bought cereal in a long time, boy, cereal has gone up in price. Who knew cereal was so expensive these days?
Yeah.
And then the other one that I like is Sola, SOLA bagels, is 15 grams of protein and 30 grams of fiber. You can buy them at Walmart, Whole Foods, and Wegmans for those that have Wegmans in their life. There's another one that another patient recommended that it's a little cleaner. It has a lot of flaxseed in it. I think it's kind of dry, but it's Roya, Roya, and that Sola bagel is 100 and I think it's 140 calories, so not big on the calories, only 5 net carb. The Roya is 80 calories and 5 net carb, but I don't know. I think I'll take the few extra calories on the Sola bagel because I just find them to be dry. They also have some other products. Don't get the cinnamon rolls; they're disgusting. So,
Yeah.
but
And
high in fiber if you can choke it down.
if you added, you know, to something like that, you added a half of an avocado and you put on an egg, you know, you could probably in that avocado, you could be to 22 grams of carbs for the day already with breakfast. You know, and obviously you want to balance that energy intake in the morning. I love breakfast. That's one of the first things I ask my patients when they tell me that they have brain fog and fatigue is, are you eating breakfast? Because how are we going to power ourselves through the day if we are in a negative balance of energy? What's going to end up happening is we're going to feel snacky. We're going to overeat lunch. We're going to pull off because we're, you know, out driving around. We're going to pull off and say, oh, I'm starving. I've got to eat whatever. Pull into the fast food. And then you just feel like junk, you know, in general, because you get over that. You take in the calories, but they're calorically dense, and you're back into that fatigue state again. So eat breakfast and figure out what you like and make it balanced. And then that's where I would put my calories is in a good breakfast and a good lunch. And then I would probably try to dial it back a little bit more at dinner time, because like I said, that's when you're more insulin resistant, is at night. So if you have a carb heavy dinner and the biggest meal of the day, your blood sugars are going to be wonky all night. You may wake up in the middle of the night because of that. So it really all goes together, you know, with all the other pieces, you know, watching that energy balance. And when you take it, everything, you know, when you eat, which meals you prioritize and which meals are the biggest, play into so many other things, like, you know, your energy throughout the day and then your sleep overnight. Anything else?
You're amazing, Jess. Thank you.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I do
Yeah,
love this
I
stuff.
learned so much from you.
Thanks. I'm so happy that you guys came, and I hope you learned something, and we'll turn it over to Heather. I know we have one next month, and I can't remember what it is. Does anyone?
I think it may be Lindsay. Hang on a second. Let me look. My colleague Lindsay is a nutritionist, but before I tell you that, let me make sure, and I'll record it on here. Just let me bring it up because my menopause brain doesn't remember. Yeah, February 26th is Beyond the Plateau, so root causes of stalled weight loss with Lindsay Pennington. She's doing a program for me in my personal practice that I'm sure some other people may want. So we'll kind of figure out what that looks like. Then the next one in March is Strong at Any Age. I think Christine, maybe you gave her to us, Kim Bolden, or is that a Laura person?
That's Laura.
Okay, that's
I have
Laura's.
April.
Yeah, fitness and function.
Yeah, Kim Bolden is a certified physical trainer, fitness
Amazing.
trainer.
And then in April, we have menopause, metabolism, and muscle. That's Dr. Christine and Lindsay Brooke with her. In May, we have another nutritionist that is coming in, Anita Marchandi. I need to update our list. She sees people all over the country and is licensed, I believe, in 50 states and takes insurance. So she's going to come talk to you all. And then Dr. Laura's going to do lifestyle and longevity in June, and then we're going to take a little summer break, and then I'm coming in October to do sexual health and midlife concerns. I wouldn't surprise me, knowing us, though, if we pop another one in here before for like end of year and things like that, because people have been reaching out to ask. So just stay tuned. We'll all be sharing it in our newsletters.
Great. Anything else that we need to cover? No? Well, thank you all for
so much.
coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks for coming,
welcome.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.